Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload, and the knife tapped the board in an easy beat, a kitchen metronome guiding her hands. She halved a cucumber, slid the pieces into a bowl, reached for a tomato, and spoke as if discussing grocery coupons. On Saturday, I have a date. I want to try being with another man. The room tilted. I watched a seed cling to steel and felt my life bend around a quiet sentence. I froze for a breath, then something inside me straightened, like a spine finding alignment after years of bad posture. I smirked, not from cruelty, but because sudden clarity can look like amusement. "Good luck," I said. Her eyes lifted. Surprise fizzed across her face, faint as soda. "What do you mean, good luck?" "You've just ended our marriage," I replied, voice even. "Tonight you're out of my bedroom and tomorrow I'm 57 filing for divorce. You wanted new experiences? Go and get them." She set the knife down. Basil perfumed the air. The faucet dripped once, loud as a hammer in the hush. She folded the towel with deliberate care, a small ceremony for the end of something bigger than towels. "Don't be ridiculous," she said, softer than the words deserved. "People try things, we can talk." "We tried," I said. "Therapy, trips, calendars with color-coded efforts to fix whatever this is. You've chosen a stranger as your next attempt. I choose a lawyer." The house listened the way houses do, silently, with wood that remembers every season. She crossed her arms, ring glinting like a coin at the bottom of a fountain that never granted a wish. "You're overreacting." "I'm reacting exactly," I said. "This isn't a debate round, it's a boundary." She left the kitchen without another word. I stayed, palms on the cool countertop, counting heartbeats until they slowed. The clock hummed. Outside, a neighbor called for a dog. Life kept its tempo, indifferent to ours. I took a notebook from the junk drawer, wrote the date, the time, the quote, and underlined it. Facts first, feelings later. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was recording a truth no one would be allowed to bend. In the living room, the sofa held the ghosts of movie nights and birthdays, a stadium of flattened cushions that had cheered us through better days. I sat, rubbed the groove under my ring, and thought of the first time I saw her laughing at an art gallery statement about the monotony of bounty. She'd made a joke about cornfields and destiny. I'd laughed because she did, not because the joke was brilliant, but because joy looked good on her. We collected years like stamps after that, road trips, kitchen dance steps, a cat who believed every lap belonged to her. Somewhere along the way, laughter changed into sighs and sighs into silence. I tried not to edit those chapters now. I tried to accept that both things existed, the thunderstorm we once admired together from a roadside and the drought that followed. Upstairs, drawers opened and closed. I pictured her building a small camp in the guest room, careful not to take what she believed still belonged to us. That pronoun had just expired, but grammar lingers. I texted my friend Lewis, "You around tonight? Might need to talk." He replied with a thumbs up and a bad tea promise. Solid ground, she came back down. "I'll stay at Mom's," she announced, coat already in hand. "We can think." "You can think anywhere," I said. "Keys come back Sunday. After that, I change the locks." Her chin tipped up. "You can't do that." "I can, and I will. We'll handle property through council. I won't live in limbo." She stared, waiting for a softer version of me to arrive and make this moment easier. He didn't show. She left. The door clicked. Air settled. I wandered our bedroom, that museum of vows and laundry. 2 photos on the dresser, desert dawn, a cousin's wedding, seemed to watch me. I removed my ring, set it beside the lamp, and pressed the faint circle it left, the pale echo of years. In the guest room, I stripped the bed and remade it with fresh sheets. Starting small helps when ending. Stomped through the house wearing boots. Sleep found me late. I woke early, washed, shaved, fed the cat, and made a list at the kitchen table. Call a lawyer. Gather documents. Mortgage, bank statements, retirement accounts, insurance, car title. Photograph the rooms. Inventory valuables without turning petty. Communicate only in writing. Stay civil. Don't check her social media. Don't rewrite history. Breathe. I moved through the house with my phone like an inspector. capturing shelves, jewelry, electronics, the clock from my grandfather that never kept perfect time but always tried. I paused under the painting from that first gallery, cornrows stretching toward a thin horizon. We'd laughed at the artist then. Today the field didn't look monotonous, it looked patient. At 9, I walked into a law office decorated with lighthouses. The receptionist offered water in a paper cup designed to seem comforting. The attorney looked younger than the situation deserved, but wore professionalism like well-cut fabric. He asked for the story. I gave him the sentence, the kitchen, the towel, the door. He nodded in a manner that meant he'd heard many versions and still respected each. "Good that you set boundaries," he said. "We'll file promptly. Keep a journal of events, dates, times, anything financial. Stick to facts. No battles by text, no surprise withdrawals. Division will follow statute. We'll aim for fairness." The words weren't dramatic. That helped. Drama had already arrived. I wanted procedure. I signed preliminary papers, scheduled another meeting, and left with a folder that felt like a shield. Outside, a food truck sputtered to life. A cyclist drifted by, balancing coffee and momentum. The world didn't care about my marriage. The world cared about parking meters and lunch specials. I found comfort in that. At a diner that had never pretended to be anything else, I ate scrambled eggs and toast. The waitress topped my mug without asking, and I took a sip because saying no to kindness felt unwise. A couple in the next booth weighed microwave models as if debating treaties. I texted Lewis an address and time. He replied with a cheery skull emoji he used to mock dread. Home again. I drafted a brief note and left it on the counter beneath a pear-shaped magnet. "We'll communicate by email for logistics. Please do not enter my bedroom. I'll be here tonight. We can schedule retrievals through counsel or directly in writing. Clear, dull, humane." The afternoon asked for tasks. I gathered our tax returns, insurance policies, warranties, passports. I sorted photos into boxes. Keep, digitize, ask later. The cat supervised from a sunstripe, offering no opinions beyond purrs. In the closet I found a forgotten sweater of hers that still carried a hint of winter walks. I folded it gently and placed it in the guest room, a small mercy I'd want returned if roles reversed. Evening brought silence that no longer felt like accusation. I cooked pasta with garlic and olive oil, ate at the island, listened to a baseball broadcast low enough to be a lullaby. After dishes, I stood in the doorway and tried to imagine the living room without our shared past pinned to every surface. A reading chair near the window, maybe. A plant that didn't mind being ignored. Fewer knickknacks, more air. Her email arrived at 9. Subject, logistics. Polite, neat. She proposed returning Tuesday to collect essentials from the guest room and bathroom. She asked if we could talk. She used please twice and thank you once, as if manners could sand down metal. I replied, "Tuesday works, 6 to 7. I'll be present but unavailable for conversation beyond practical needs. A temporary key will be under the mat until then." Monday came with coworkers discussing weekend barbecues and broken sprinklers. I finished a report, nodded through a meeting, avoided the impulse to turn life into speeches. At lunch, I bought a blue spiral notebook and 2 pens that promised to glide. I also took home a hardy plant with glossy leaves, the store tag bragging about resilience. Apt purchase. That evening, I removed 3 photos from the bedroom. Us in hats, us barefoot on a beach, us at a table filled with messy cakes. I wrapped them in brown paper and wrote labels for later decisions. The room exhaled when they were gone. I did too. Tuesday, she arrived at 6 on the dot, knocking as if asking to borrow sugar. I opened the door, stepped aside. "Hello," she said to the entryway. "Hello," I said to the hallway. We moved like careful colleagues. She gathered a few sweaters, a box from her grandmother, a stack of paperbacks, toiletries, shoes lined like small boats. At the drawer of takeout menus, she smiled at a pizza place that had closed years ago. "Remember their crust?" she asked, reaching for a shared nostalgia as if it were a lever. "I do," I said, and didn't add more. At the door, she hesitated. "You're really doing this?" "I already did," I answered. "Saturday, just announced it." "You don't want to hear why?" "I can guess the chapters. I won't read them out loud." She nodded, almost grateful that I refused to audition for the role of confessor. "Do you want the cornfield?" she asked, glancing toward the mantel. I'll keep it unless you want it." "You keep it," she said quickly, as if the painting itself embarrassed her now. It always made me feel like I was waiting. When she left, I stood in front of the field. Rose marched toward a quiet horizon. "Waiting," she'd said. "Maybe." To me, tonight, it looked like steady work under a clear sky. I opened the blue notebook and recorded the evening as the attorney suggested. Tuesday, 6:45 p.m. Retrieval without dispute. Temporary key returned. Future pickups by email. Then I turned the page and wrote for nobody but me. I want a life not built around someone else's gamble. I want mornings where coffee tastes like coffee. I want a kitchen where the knife beat means dinner, not declarations. Wednesday, I drove a different way to work, passing a park where a child in a cape sprinted like joy had legs. An older man practiced slow stretches beneath a maple. A woman walked a dog that strutted like it held office. I let the scene iron out a wrinkle in my chest. I bought paint swatches, gentle gray, hopeful green, a blue named after a lighthouse, and laid them on the table like tarot. Not for now, but soon. Change doesn't always need trumpets. Sometimes it begins with a color card and a quiet vow. That night I drafted a message for friends and family. "We're separating. It's sad and necessary. I'm okay, and I will be okay. Please be kind, not outraged." I saved it instead of sending it. News can wait until my dignity feels less fragile. Thursday brought drafts from the attorney. Friday, signatures that sounded like pens on paper, but felt like doors finding their hinges. Saturday, the day she had marked for new experience, rose cool and unremarkable. I brewed coffee and drank it. It tasted exactly like itself. I watered the glossy plant and searched its name. ZZ. Resilient, forgiving, patient, fitting. I drove to the lake and walked the 1.25-mile path past ducks, joggers, a wedding party collecting light in photos they'll frame. I didn't sneer at them. Hope deserves better. Under the willow, I stood still and listened to leaves whisper old stories. Somewhere in the city, she would order a drink and tell a man facts about herself she'd once told me. That belonged to her now. I let it go. Evening. Home. Spaghetti again because comfort doesn't need imagination. I ate slowly, phone face down, radio off, no commentary track. The cat curled at my foot like a comma pausing a sentence that will continue tomorrow. I stepped onto the porch and watched moths circle the light, aimless and tireless. A tiny ballet that didn't require meaning to remain beautiful. I went back inside with a calmer pulse and a plan shaping into something sturdy. Finish the filing, sort the house, choose paint, keep kindness, refuse chaos, build mornings that don't ask for permission. I turned off the lamp, lay in the guest room, and felt the mattress learn me. Sleep arrived without a fight. In the morning, sunlight laid a thin gold bar across the floorboards. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote the plainest vow of my adult life. Today, I choose peace. Then I underlined it and began listing the first 10 actions that would prove I meant it. The following days unfolded like pages in a slow book, each one heavier than the last. I wasn't sleeping well, but I wasn't collapsing either. That strange calm I'd felt in the kitchen lingered, like armor I didn't know I owned. Tuesday evening, she came again, on schedule, polite as a guest in her own house. She carried 2 empty suitcases this time, her steps clicking across the hardwood like a clock counting down. I stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching her avoid my eyes. She headed straight for the guest room, collected more of her belongings, sweaters, shoes, a stack of framed photographs that had once been displayed on our walls. She hesitated at one point, pulling a dress from the closet. It was red, the one she'd worn at our 20th anniversary dinner. She held it for a moment, ran her hand across the fabric, then shoved it into the suitcase without folding it. I didn't speak. I had promised myself no speeches, no pleas, no bargaining, only facts. When she finished, she dragged the bags toward the door. "This is surreal," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's reality," I said, steady. "We both chose it, you in the kitchen, me right after." Her lips pressed together. She wanted to argue, but no argument remained. She left without another word. The click of the door felt like punctuation, sharp and final. That night I opened my new blue notebook again. I recorded the time she arrived, what she took, the condition of the house. Then I flipped the page and wrote something else, something private. Tonight, the silence felt different, not heavy, not hostile, just mine. Wednesday morning, I started shifting the house around. I moved the armchair by the window, stacked books in new places, carried 2 boxes of old clothes to the garage. Every small change whispered the same truth. This place belonged to me now, not us. For the first time in years, the house wasn't a compromise. When I went to work, I found myself strangely lighter. People joked at the coffee machine. I even laughed along. It wasn't joy, but it wasn't despair either. It was a kind of clean slate. By Friday, the lawyer sent me draft papers. I reviewed them carefully, every line like a small cut, but necessary. I signed, mailed back what needed mailing, and felt the weight of official steps pressing forward. The past was sliding into legal language, and oddly, that helped. Saturday arrived, the day she had chosen for her new experience. The same day I'd marked for freedom. I thought I'd wake bitter, but instead I woke rested. I brewed coffee, toasted bread, and watched sunlight land on the kitchen counter. The same counter where she'd cut vegetables and ended us. This morning, though, it looked different, cleaner, my counter, not hers. Around noon, I drove to the lake. Families picnicked, joggers looped the path, and kids chased ducks along the bank. Life went on, completely indifferent to my private upheaval. I found peace in that. I walked slowly, let the breeze brush past me, and didn't think about where she was or with whom. That wasn't my story anymore. That evening, I made a simple dinner: spaghetti, garlic bread, a salad. I ate slowly, savoring the fact that no one could ruin this quiet. The cat curled up near my chair, purring as though even she understood the shift. After dinner, I sat on the porch. The street was calm, porch lights glowing across driveways, moths circling bulbs, neighbors chatting faintly in the distance. I leaned against the railing, breathed deep, and realized something important. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not waiting for her to come home. Not waiting for her to love me again. Not waiting for a marriage that had been gone long before she spoke the words. I opened my notebook once more and wrote, "She wanted adventure, she can have it. I want peace, and I will have it." For the first time in a long while, I believed my own handwriting. The following weeks became a strange mixture of routine and reinvention. Each day carried the same outer shape: coffee in the morning, work, dinner at home. But the inside of those days shifted, as though every moment had been rewired to remind me I was alone, yet free. The first weekend after she left, I opened closets we hadn't touched in years. Dusty boxes stacked like monuments to a life we kept saying we'd sort someday. Someday had finally arrived. I pulled out winter coats 2 sizes too small, stacks of greeting cards we once exchanged, even a half-broken lamp she'd insisted on keeping, for parts. I filled donation bags, labeled boxes, and set them by the garage door. Each item removed felt like a pebble lifted from my chest. Sometimes, though, grief still ambushed me. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to share something trivial, a funny commercial, the way the cat had tumbled off the couch. And then I'd remember. The silence after those reflexes was deep, but not unbearable. Instead of sending her messages, I began jotting small notes into my blue notebook. Things once meant for her became mine alone. The cat prefers the new rug. Neighbor painted his fence blue. It works. Morning light looks like gold dust on the counter. I began collecting these like proof that life could still hold sparks. Her emails arrived weekly. Polite, almost businesslike. She asked for times to pick up more belongings. Each time she came with suitcases, moved briskly, avoided looking too long at me. I noticed she never once asked how I was. She never once said she was sorry. That stung at first, but after a while, I realized her silence was its own gift. Without apologies, there was no temptation to forgive. Without questions, there was no false pretense of care. She was gone in every way that mattered, and that made it easier to let her go. On her third visit, she lingered near the bookshelf. Her fingers brushed the spine of a novel I had given her years ago. "Do you want this?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Take it." Her eyes flicked toward me, searching for a crack in my calm, but I offered none. She slid the book into her bag and left minutes later. I locked the door behind her, leaned against it, and let out a long breath. Each visit was a test, but each one also reminded me of my resolve. At work, I noticed how much energy I'd wasted carrying the weight of our failing marriage. Suddenly, I had more focus. I finished projects faster. I even volunteered for a presentation, something I hadn't done in years. Colleagues remarked on my sharper presence. One joked, "Retirement suits you early," and I laughed with a kind of lightness that surprised me. One evening, Lewis invited me over again. His terrible tea was, as always, tolerable, but his company mattered more. We sat on his balcony, city lights flickering like patient stars. He asked, "Do you ever think about revenge?" I thought carefully. No. She already gave me the best revenge by handing me freedom. If I waste my time chasing ways to hurt her, I'd still be tied to her. I don't want chains. He nodded. Good, because bitterness ages people quicker than time. I went home that night and wrote in my notebook, "Revenge is just a leash. I've cut mine." As the divorce process moved forward, the lawyer remained steady, guiding me through paperwork and hearings. Every signature sealed another door. Each step, while bureaucratic, felt strangely cleansing. When the final decree came through weeks later, I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, holding the stamped papers. The air outside was cool. People bustled around me, living their own dramas. But I sat still, whispering one sentence aloud. "It's over." The words carried no anger, only release. That evening, I bought myself a modest dinner, steak, potatoes, and a slice of pie. Not a celebration exactly, but a quiet acknowledgement. For years, I'd swallowed disappointment with meals. Tonight, I ate without compromise. Every bite felt earned. The days after the final papers brought a new rhythm. I began rearranging the house, painting walls with the colors I'd chosen from the swatches. Harbor fog gray in the bedroom, stroll green in the kitchen, distant lighthouse blue in the living room. The changes were small but powerful. Each stroke of paint rewrote the story of the house, erasing shadows, inviting light. Neighbors began to notice. "Looks brighter," one said while passing by. I smiled. "Feels brighter too." I also started taking long walks, something I'd neglected during the marriage. Each step gave me time to think, to breathe. I'd watch the sky change colors at dusk, let the air settle my thoughts. On one of those walks, a boy kicked a soccer ball toward me by mistake. I sent it back with a decent kick. His grin was wide, uncomplicated. For a moment, I felt 20 years younger. One Saturday morning, I visited the farmer's market alone. I bought fresh bread, a jar of honey, and a bundle of flowers. Carrying them home, I laughed at myself. Years ago, I would have thought it strange to buy flowers without someone to give them to. But that morning, I put them in a vase on my own table. The house deserved beauty, so did I. She still sent the occasional email, still distant and polite. I responded with brief, factual replies. There was nothing left to say. Our lives had become parallel lines never to cross again. I realized one evening while reading in my newly arranged living room that I hadn't thought about her in hours. That felt like victory. The cornfield painting still hung above the mantel. For months it had felt like a wound. But one night, sitting under the soft glow of a new lamp, I looked at it differently. The rows no longer looked like monotony or waiting. They looked like order, patience, steady work stretching toward a horizon. My horizon. One final email came from her months later. She wrote, "I hope you're well." That was all. No details, no apologies, no news of her adventures. I stared at the words for a long time, then deleted the message. I didn't reply. My silence said everything. I was well, because she was no longer part of my story. Life didn't become perfect, but it became mine. And that was better than anything she could have offered. One evening, while watching the sun set from my porch, I opened my notebook and wrote the last entry that felt connected to her. She left chasing new experiences. I stayed and built peace. She sought adventure in others. I found freedom in myself. She thought she was escaping boredom. I discovered joy in simplicity. She ended a marriage. I began a life. I closed the notebook, set it on the table, and let the silence settle like a friend. Revenge wasn't fire or fury. It wasn't shouting or schemes. Revenge was living better, freer, calmer after being discarded. And that was exactly what I was doing. The knife had tapped the cutting board weeks ago. announcing an ending. But tonight, the only sound in the kitchen was mine, the scrape of a chair, the pour of fresh coffee, the hum of a life reclaimed. And for the first time in decades, that sound was enough. That night, as I sat on the porch with the last glow of daylight fading behind the rooftops, I realized my story had come full circle. What began with a knife tapping on a cutting board had turned into silence filled with peace. She went searching for something new, and in the end, I found something far better: myself. Life wasn't broken. It was rebuilt. Stronger, calmer, and fully mine. And now I'll leave it to you. If you were in my place, what would you have done that night in the kitchen? Would you have reacted the same way, or chosen a different path? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to hit the like button. Share this video with friends and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support means everything. It helps me bring you more powerful stories every week. So what's your answer? What would you have done?